celebration of new work by Charles Harper Webb and Ron Koertge. Please give it up.
Yeah.
My name is Jimmy Vega. I'm the Executive Director of Beyond Baroque. I'd like to start by acknowledging Beyond Baroque's presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tonga peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to these peoples through settler colonialism, genocidal practices, and the violent disposition of their land. And as an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting Indigenous communities, their stories, and cultures. For those who don't know, Beyond Baroque is Los Angeles' oldest literary arts center, located here in Venice, California. Founded in 1968 by George Drury Smith, first as an experimental literary magazine, before reimagining itself and becoming the literary home we know it as today. We are based out of the original Venice City Hall and help support writers and help cultivate new writing through our extensive program of writing workshops, readings, and performances. We offer a number of workshops online, a poetry workshop currently facilitated by Martin Dago. We also offer intensive one-day workshops throughout the year with more slated for the fall. Aside from our workshops, we offer over 100 programs a year in this theater. So far, we're 50 plus, and we'll certainly reach 100 by the end of the year. Yeah, it's really exciting. Next week, in fact, we have a slate full of programs featuring Eve Wood, ML Liebler with special guests, and a 5-year anniversary of Genesis Perez's flash photography. And in fact, at the end of July, we have a salsa fundraiser where we'll be transforming Beyond Baroque into a dance floor. Yeah, so we're going to have dance lessons from Dancer University. We're also going to have bachata lessons from Koertge. So do please check that out. It's on our website. Please help us support. Buy a ticket, come and dance, and help us spread the word. It is a fundraiser. We currently also have a silent auction benefit going on in the space. So as you were coming in, you might have seen some art in the lobby. There's also art upstairs in the Mike Kelly Gallery. All of that is currently a silent auction for Beyond Baroque with bid sheets at the front of the lobby for you to inquire and get out some art. That's going to be closing at the end of the month, so please do check that out. Finally, we offer several memberships to Beyond Baroque, starting at $75 for an individual membership. Purchasing a membership really helps sustain the space. It helps us continue doing what we're doing here. And if you're a member, we greatly appreciate you being a member with us. Since 1968, Beyond Baroque has nurtured generations of Los Angeles poets, writers, and artists, and we can't do this without your support. So thank you for being here with us today. And a big thank you to our staff for making today possible. Ivan Salinas, Eric Alberg, who's in the booth, Genesis Perez, Rihanna Cielo Chavez, Annika Duenas, and Grace Muller. Thank you so much for all that you do for the space. And with that, I think we're going to welcome our first reader, who is Ron Koertge, the current poet laureate of South Pasadena, widely published and anthologized. Billy Collins calls him the poet who journeys deep into the imagination's outer limits. He's also very funny. Please welcome Ron Koertge.
It's just wonderful to be back at Beyond Baroque again. And speaking of the Wanda Coleman Theater, I have a little Wanda Coleman story. Everybody, can you hear this?
Yeah.
Okay. If I didn't have my wife, I'd probably talking to her forearm. I don't know what I would do without her. The Wanda Coleman story is brief, but it is this. I was maybe 28 years old. I'd been teaching at the community college in Pasadena. I finally had a little money and I bought myself a blue cashmere sweater to match my eyes. So I wore the blue cashmere sweater down here to read with Wanda Coleman. Those of you who are young don't know Wanda probably, but those of you who do, you know what, she's just a powerhouse. So I got up and I read, and I did okay. I was young and I had read often. And Wanda read and blew the doors off, of course. We stood around, talked to a few folks, and we walked out together. Our cars were parked on Venice near each other. And I said to her, well, I said, that was fun, you know, I hope I see you again. And she said, yeah, you know, that was fun. She said, but I feel like telling you one thing. You are about the whitest white boy I have ever seen. So I put that on a t-shirt, wore it proudly. Okie doke. All right, time for a few poems. William James Collins, better known as Billy, was on, when he was poet laureate of the US, maybe a decade or two ago, was on Zoom, and I was listening to him. And he said something that I never forgot as far as a poetry reading or a poem goes. He said that starting a poem for him was like stepping into a canoe, because a lot can go wrong. So starting a poetry reading is a little bit like stepping into a canoe. I don't want things to go wrong. So I'm going to start, I have a light touch anyway, but this is quite a light touch poem. It's called Please Write Back, and it's from a note, an email, although I used to get a lot of letters. I write middle grade fiction and young adult fiction. And my poems get picked up, and they were in a lot of high school and middle school anthologies, and kids wrote to me. So this young man said, "Dear Mr. K, for Poetry Week, I picked you, but my teacher told me you were only a minor poet." And then he misspelled minor. So I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, you know, I can't resist. So here's my comment back to the young man. Your teacher is right, I am a minor poet. And attached is a picture of me ready for work. Headlamp, pick, heavy shoes, gloves, canary. I'm always looking for seams of gold. And sometimes all I find is coal, which is beautiful. Oh dear, which in its own way is good for cooking and heating. And the canary is for company. And because it looks like gold, it sings too. I hope this answers your question, and tell your teacher hi from me. You're already a good audience, but I'll tell you, and Charles, I think maybe he'll tell you too. If you don't mind, hold your applause. Wait till the end. I'll read right through my set. What happens is the early poems get a lot of attention, and the later poems pouch. So we can avoid that. I want to go back in the past to a poem that I wouldn't have written if I hadn't been friends with Jerry Loughlin, whom some of you know, and was a really good friend of mine, and Ed Field, and some of you know Ed. Ed gave me permission to write about anything. This poem goes back to graduate school. Jerry and I were in grad school together. We were together for a couple of years, and I must have moved 15 times. One little apartment to another, one little back house to another. I lived with a girlfriend for a while, got a roommate for a while. And one time he said to me, Ronnie, he said, there's got to be a better way. This poem tells you what I thought was a better way. It's called Moving Day. Well, sitting home one night, I hear burglars fiddling with the lock, and this is what I've been waiting for. I run around to the back and open the door. I invite the burglars in and pour some drinks. I tell them to relax, and I help them off with their shoes and their masks. In a little while, we're fast friends, and after a dozen toasts to J. Edgar Hoover, they begin to carry things out to the van. I point to the hidden silver, hold the door as they wrestle with the bed, and generally make myself useful. When they get the pickup loaded and come back inside for one last brandy, I get the drop on them. I use Spike's gun, I shoot them both, and imprint Sluggo's prints on the handle. Then I get in that van and drive to my new apartment. That's how it's done. This maybe Bianca loves this poem. She likes a lot of my poems. What a good heart. But she particularly likes this poem called Signs and Miracles. It's short, and it turns on the idea that there are two kinds of prayers. Prayers of petition, which is basically, give me a bicycle, and there's a prayer of petition in this poem. And then in a more adult prayer where you pray for guidance. Well, the character in this poem, who, gee whiz, has my name, hasn't got beyond the first kind of prayer. Signs and miracles. It's a verse from the Bible. You'll hear it. If you exist, I said, send me a pony. And immediately Jesus appeared in my bedroom. I got off my knees and I said, you heard my prayer. And he quoted himself, except ye see signs and miracles, you will not believe. And I said, be reasonable. Jesus, it's hard to just take your word for it. And he said, but I'm right here, Ronnie, right in front of you. Isn't that enough? So, is the pony outside? Like the Pushcart Prize, I'm still waiting for the Pushcart. The UPS guy breaks my heart. My mother passed away quite a while ago, and her sister Evelyn was my favorite aunt, and I called her Sissy because when you're little, I couldn't say Evelyn, so it was Aunt Sissy. Bianca and I would go back and see my mom and also my aunt. My aunt was in assisted living in kind of a swanky place. We got to know, at least by sight, the people, and we would go back and they'd be gone. They'd passed away. We knew people. This poem is a pantoum. Those of you who are, poets or poetry scholars, you know that two lines in one stanza roll into the next, etc., etc. The poem's called The Afterlife, and it has a male speaker. I've been dead for years, so this place suits me. 60,000 channels, thanks to cable. Love the game room and those herbal teas. Everyone remembers Betty Grable. 60,000 channels, thanks to cable. Sleep's not a problem, we're all deceased. But everyone remembers Betty Grable. Marilyn Monroe keeps asking for a priest. Sleep's not a problem, we're all deceased. Tucked in among 1,000 souvenirs. Marilyn Monroe keeps asking for a priest. Frank Sinatra hums the music of the spheres. Tucked in among 1,000 souvenirs, there's room for clippings in my Betamax. Frank Sinatra hums the music of the spheres. Every afternoon I whack my Cadillacs. There's room for clippings in my Betamax. The past is present like a golden key. Every afternoon I wax my Cadillacs. I've been dead for years, so this place suits me. As I said, Ed Field gave me permission to write about anything. When I read his Bride of Frankenstein poem, it was like, I felt like Saul on the road to Taurus, and I wanted to change my name. It's so blazingly funny what Ed could do and what I was able to do. This poem is about Nancy Drew. You guys know who she is? Yes. Yeah, well, I don't know what I was doing in high school reading Nancy Drew, and we won't go into that. But I would go to the library and read it on the sly. One of the things that come to me when I write, and I write, as all my students know, I write something every day. I sit down, I fool around, I read other poets, I ask for guidance because it's a more sophisticated prayer. And every now and then I get a poem like this, which is about Nancy Drew, but she's just a girl sleuth. Nobody ever knows her inner life. This is a little bit of that. I can't go to the drugstore without stumbling over a mystery. There I am in aisle 11 with an owl with a message lands by the Listerine. The next thing I know, I'm in a secret passage. Kudos for my friends Bess and George, who watched me solve the case of the born-again badger. One more key to the city, one more pat on the back. I have a boyfriend, Ned Nickerson, but no time to fall in love, given all the mossy mansions, scarlet slippers, haunted windmills, and forgotten cities clamoring for my attention. I don't mind being busy, but no one knows how lonely I am, how long the nights, a moon's white light, revealing yet another body by the gazebo. Ooh, now you know. Now you know about Nancy and her life. I'm going to read a school poem called After the Final. Charles and I have both been professors most of our lives, 30, 40 years of it. School poems are dangerous because there's been a lot of them. And one of the subgenres is the school poem where the students ask you to go out with them for a drink after the final. Nevertheless, I wrote the poem anyway. Some students want me to go with them to a campus bar. One drink, please, Mr. K. So I sit at scarred tables with hearts carved deep in the wood by, apparently, tipsy lumberjacks. Nick Horse from the Pitcher says he's had enough of school. He wants to dig graves with a shovel, get in touch with what he calls real reality. Billy G, there are two Billys, rushes over to ask the name of Shelley's friend who drowned when the Don Juan sank. Billy says, I've got a bet with some dickhead undergrad, and I tell him the kid's name was Edward Williams. Billy G pounds the table. Yes, drinks are on me. But I think that no one else remembers Charlie Vivian, who also died that day. He was what some scholars call a boat boy. He helped Shelley like he helped every amateur sailor. How is it possible that Charlie didn't know how to swim? My students pour more beer, pass me an earbud so I can hear the bands they love. They ask about my wife. They want me to dance, and pretty soon I'm shaking hands goodbye. Violetta is tipsy and holds on. Please, Mr. K, aren't we your favorite students ever? On cue, the jukebox falls silent. I wave them closer so I can whisper. Virginia Woolf had 3 dogs, Pinka, Grizzle, and Sally. But Pinka is the one she loved the most. How about 2 more, as we say? It's called the 2-poem warning. And what I've read briefly, so I'm not afraid of this, but you don't want to be at a reading and have someone give a 2-poem warning and hear people say, thank God for that. But we've been to those readings. This is not there. So the second last poem is the Pandora's Kitchen, which is from the recent book. Charles and I are selling books today. If you cannot resist by reading, cool cover. So, you all know the story of Pandora. I won't remind you of that, but no one knows the story of Pandora's Kitchen. Pandora's late. She can't sleep. She's in pajamas and her hair is a mess. She stares at the refrigerator. Inside is yogurt and the head of iceberg lettuce, mustard, mayonnaise. Not envy and lust. Not the other hard chips that flew out of the box that Zeus gave her as a wedding present. The box that Ovid called an odious treasure. It was her destiny to open it, a mistake Pandora had to make, but that doesn't help much in the middle of the night. Hungry, lonely, remorseful, but still beautiful, even in the light from the small bulb in the back of the low-fat cottage cheese. And finally, let me drink from this small bottle of vodka. I don't write dystopia, not in my middle grade fiction or my fantasy fiction. My last book with a friend of mine is a fantasy novel. But this poem called The Last Dog Catcher is dystopian in the sense of Bianca and I saw a movie, and in the movie it wasn't a sci-fi film, but the world was going to end in this film. It was a giant comet, so that everybody was doing what they loved doing because the world, they didn't have long to live. So people who liked sex were having more sex. People who drank more were drinking more. People who were prayerful were praying. I wanted some structure on this poem, so every little stanza begins with the word last. And the poem begins like this. Last hysterical newscast as the death comet approaches. Last appointment with Valentina at Slippery Lotus Spa and Massage. Last sparsely attended seminar on health and safety in the workplace. Last happy hour. Last bartender pouring his last double. Last stoner files up the last joint with the last big lighter. Last doctor tells the last nurse how he has always felt about her. Last tank of gas, last mail delivery, last half-gallon of milk, last kiss, last dog catcher rides around with the last dog in his lap. Thank you very much.
That's for Charles. Long Koertge, folks, give it up one more time. All right. Called by Lifescape Southern California's most inventive and accessible poet, Charles Harper Webb has published numerous books of poetry with University of Pittsburgh Press, University of Wisconsin Press, and others. He is Professor Emeritus of English at California State University, Long Beach. Please welcome up Charles Harper Webb.
Hi, well, the first thing I'm going to do is move this. Now, I'll step on it, but I actually have a poem about, by mistake, drinking a student's water bottle. It was right next to mine. I have to watch that. Well, I want to start by just saying how great it is to be here. Beyond Baroque has been really wonderful to me my whole career, and it's great to be with my good friend Ron. We may have even met at Beyond Baroque, but we've been friends for so long, I can't even remember how long it is. But anyway, it's a great honor for me to read with him. I think he just tops. Okay, I am in the lucky situation, I guess, of having two books come out almost simultaneously. This one, Old Gnu, is verse poems, and this one is prose poems. So I'm going to, in order not to favor one over the other, I'm going to just go back and forth. And yeah, like Ron said, you don't have to applaud until the end when I hope that I'll be driven back against the wall with the force of it.
Force.
This is the title poem of my prose poem book, The Elephant of Surprise. The roster of arrogance, start over. The rooster of arrogance struts through the barnyard, cock-a-doodle-doodling for all to hear. The antelope of enthusiasm leads the parade, rhinestone antlers glittering. The guinea pigs of chagrin carpet the carpet, glad to trip you up and knock you down. The puppy of embarrassment humps your leg no matter where you hide. The elephant of surprise, though, glides stealthy as a snake, flies silent as an owl, stalks noiseless as a panther, before trumpeting loudly enough to kill the living, then wake them up again, it springs. I like to write about animals. So this is one that comes out of a strange thing that you've probably heard of called the infinite monkey theorem. And that theorem is that given enough time and monkeys banging on typewriters, one will type Shakespeare's complete plays. So that's a good way to think about infinity, is to think about how long it would take for that to happen. Lucky monkey. Many, of course, will butcher the bard's best. Hamlet become a tiny sandwich. Polonius inhaling a basketball. One macaque will write King Lear, but follow with the complete works of Danielle Steele. Somewhere, though, some monkey will, after months in isolation, lift his hands from the keys, chew pensively on a flea he's pinched off his head, and contemplate from the treetop of his monkey brain the pages cluttering his nest of leaves. By purest chance, he'll stack them all in perfect order and bind them into folios. He'll stretch his fingers, flex his opposable thumbs, then, as monkey keyboards clatter on, and somewhere in infinity, dead billions wait for happier versions of their canceled lives, the monkey will sashay outside into a jungle full of red-rumped females and that yellow fruit he's missed so much. I always forget to do my watch, so I have some idea how long I've been going. Here's another prose poem, a short one. Some of them are longer, but this one deals with Beethoven and the universe, which seems like a good poetic subject. It's called Only So Much Patience. A man has only so much patience, growls Beethoven. He must have more, the universe replies. If he had more, he wouldn't have only so much, barks Beethoven. Then he must wait impatiently, the universe declares. Why aren't his wishes granted? Why must he wait at all? Bellows Beethoven. He has no choice, the universe explains. He has a choice, thundered Beethoven. He just can't prove he does. Choose then and leave me in peace, the universe roars. Fine, I'll write tunes for a while. Go deaf and die, Beethoven cries. Okay, here's a poem. My son's probably sick of hearing this, but this is a poem I wrote about him. My wife and son are here today, and frankly, if it wasn't for them, I'd probably have about half the body of my work, and it wouldn't be nearly as good as it is. So thank you both for being here and for giving me so much inspiration over the years. This is called Chauffeur, and I think it's self-explanatory. How comfortably they lean into each other in my car's back seat. The boy I taught to hit a curve and play guitar, embraced by the blonde girl from Hungary. They know things they're certain no one else can know. Having become, as the Bible says, one flesh, they see even those whose love created them as stowaways to be booted off their ship. They laugh to see us growing smaller as hot winds shove their sails toward isles of orchids and spice, azure lagoons that teem with fish painted in crimsons, emeralds, tangerines, no eyes but theirs fully perceive. They've heard from us how quickly calm seas can summon waves to smash them, winds to tear their sails and hurl them onto shores where sun can't pierce the hail of pumice and brimstone. But they know adults are full of baseless fears. My son I see as I change lanes, has placed his head in the girl's lap. He shuts his eyes. She shuts hers too, stroking his hair, then folds over him like a flower closing for the night. All right. I know that the applause would have been thunderous for that, but I told you not to. Here's a poem, a prose poem, that was inspired by elections and the difficulties of elections and the impossibility of elections in a way, and you'll see why in the end. This is called The New Machines. People are always trying to get a better way to do it. Because of problems balloting, the High Court mandates new machines. Say a man meant to vote for Hank Handwringer and his vow to outlaw death, yet inks the oval for Hiram Humperdump, who favors government by entrails of chickens. To be fail-safe, foolproof has been deemed offensive. Each machine must record the thought process behind each vote. To fend off tabulator error, the machines record all tabulators' brainwaves as well as their genomes, since genes determine, there's debate. The machines must note that too. Our founders limited the vote to adult white male property-owning citizens. Improved ethics widened the circle to adult white male citizens, then to all adult male citizens, then to all adult citizens except felons and, quote, mental defectives. But felons have opinions. Psychotics may have fascinating ones. The intellectually impaired deserve their say. If they can't say it, we must find out what they mean and count that too. What about children and the pets we love and the farm animals who give their all for us and wild animals from whom we've taken much? How about birds, insects, and plants? Don't slight our vegetable friends. Other countries should have input. All living things should, even microbes. The time required for vote counting may well exceed the presidential term. In this event, armies will fight the winning general to be appointed acting president, or for short, king. When the king dies, his son will take his place. If he has no son or a weak one, new armies will fight until all power rests with one man. Meanwhile, forgotten in some cave, perhaps still counting the machines. Let's see. Back to the verse poems. Oh, I might just do this one. I just did one about Eric, my son, and this is another one. You'll recognize this one for sure. This is called simply Fatherhood. Snorkeling in Hawaii, I look back every 10 feet to see if my son, who plays water polo for Hoover High and swims 100 times better than I, has sunk or been chomped by a shark, caught in a riptide, stung by a marbled cone, or de-handed by a moray eel. If he's caught his foot in a giant clam, or been skewered by a spear fisherman, torn to shreds by coral, crushed by a rogue wave, washed away by a tsunami, abducted by aliens, mummified by sea spiders, charred to melanoma by the sun, if he's combusted spontaneously, or simply vanished as completely as the seas the day you snooze, you lose daredevil who, on one of the abandoned nights that used, it seems in retrospect, to fill my life, spewed half of the boy's DNA into his mom's tempestuous uterine sea. Yeah. Works like that. Let's see. I'm going to find one. I've got these things labeled here for marked here, and it's always fun. Okay, this is one my wife particularly wanted me to read because this was one that came out of something that happened, frankly, more or less, in her family. And it's called Ivy Covered Monkey. For her judge father's 60th, Tracy buys from an artisan friend a wire monkey covered in ivy. Thanks, sweetheart, he says, and gives her gift a place of honor by the amethyst impatiens. But it spoils the redwood deck he built himself, where he likes to rest after a hard day's sentencing. It's like a stain on the floor he can't scrub out, a clogged sprinkler he is enjoined not to fix. An ivy-covered squirrel might be okay, a tortoise maybe, or even a gnome, anything but a hairy quasi-man, tail raised to fart, hand cocked to fling feces. The judge wastes 2 weekends searching for where Tracy bought the thing. Exchange impossible, he condemns it to die. Not consciously, of course. He underwaters until its leaves wilt and fall, leaving a wire corpse that he soaks twice a day to prove he tried. I'll have it replanted, Tracy says when she stops by. The very day the thing returns, the judge finds a deep scratch on his new Lexus. That's about as welcome as an ivy-covered monkey, he thinks. And has to smile. The next day, he warns a glib shyster, don't ivy-covered monkey me. Through the mind-numbing trial of a twice-paroled rapist who burned a woman and her kids alive, he pictures the monkey in the jury box, unmoved by the man's good looks and disadvantaged youth. The monkey's curved tail brings to mind a water park where the judge played as a boy, and his one takeaway from 3 years of piano, the word glissando, from the French glisser, to slide. Never know where these things are going to end up. That's one of the things that to me is the most fun about poems, trying to see where it will come out, and sometimes it doesn't come out very well, and other times it comes out like amazing, and you think, how did I ever think of that? That's much better than I could do. Those are the ones you want to keep. Here's a poem called Immortal Jellyfish. And I wrote this at a time when this little animal that I'm going to be talking about was, well, I'd never heard of it. Since then, there have been some other stories in magazines about it. I mean, I'm certain that they got the idea from me, but no one has credited me. But anyway, this is an astonishing story that was so blew me away when I heard it that I had to write the poem, Immortal Jellyfish. Adrift on SeaWorld bed sheets at age 5, I was sinking into sleep when the great white truth grabbed me. I'm going to die. It's going to hurt, and I can't get out. Ponce de Leon, ransacking gator glades for youth, was doomed I'd learn to fail. Priest whipping the meringue of afterlife, which no one wakes to taste, full fail. Achilles, whose mom dipped him like a tasty freeze cone in the sticks, epic fail. Even Sybil, shriveled bean in a jar, begging for the end, fail, fail, fail. Yet all the while, looking like a red-faced cartoon chef trapped in a light bulb, you were sweetening the ocean's bouillabaisse like other jellies. You start life as a polyp, then mature. Jellyfish acne, first date, prom, marriage, babies, karaoke night. But instead of riding life's relentless current into the abyss, you revert into a polyp. Yes, you'll die if you become part of the plankton some whale inhales by the ton. Otherwise, you don't have to. You'll never waste your life. Savings, tortured by doctors, will mumble finally, nothing we can do. Your kids won't have to choose a hospice. So what if you're 5 millimeters long? Turritopsis nutricula. You know the answer. No human has guessed, though most have tried. You, with no brain to relish what you've done, no lungs to express relief's long sigh. Yeah, it's amazing. Where is this? I'm going to find this here. Okay, here we go. If anybody's ever had any dealings with government bureaucrats, you know what inspired this poem, which is called The Department of Discontent. I guess it probably owes a nod to the Ministry of Silly Walks. Hopefully you all know what that is. Department of Discontent. The officer in charge checks my ID and asks, formal or informal complaint? When I hesitate, she says, informal's more relaxed. You speak more softly, don't raise your blood pressure, can wear jeans, no tie, use contractions and slang. Very chill, as the kids say. With formal complaints, you have to shout. Formal complainants sometimes die of strokes. Also, you need to wear a tux. Which one works better? That's confidential. Either way, we interview everyone in your complaint, then everyone in those interviews, everyone in those, etc. Leave no turn unstoned, as the joke goes. When will I know the results? Oh, you won't. They're confidential too. How does that help me? Well, she observes, you already look younger than your ID, less beaten down. I did get energized, thinking I'd stand up for myself. And so you have. Complainants sleep better, having taken steps. They walk taller for having had their say. Never doubt that out there in the dark beyond, justice sends a big wet kiss your way. All right, I don't want to go too long here, but let's see. I think I'll do two more. I'll do the 2-minute warning, but these are very long, very long, with many parts. This was something that I got, a poem, an idea I got from my students, because one of my students said this sentence, which turns out to be an internet adage. It's even called Rule 34, I find out. And that adage is, if it exists, there's porn of it. So, I couldn't resist that one. Porn of haystacks. Porn of railroad tracks and steam engines. Electricity porn. Porn of spicebush swallowtails. Porn of cecropia moths, citrus psyllids, Wang Long Bing disease. Porn of paperclips, toothpick porn. So many dark corners in cyberspace. So many sinkholes, lewd dimensions, depraved worlds. So many hiding spots under dead trees, behind waterfalls, in caverns, crypts, and cenotes. Freud said it best. Everything not a cave is a cigar. Humans invented sex to get love, a shallow substitute for porn. No one in real life feels enough frisson. We never find exactly what we're looking for. That's why we need file cabinet porn, dishwashing porn, tax doing porn, marshmallow porn, peppercorn porn, hospice porn, root canal porn. Survival of the fittest porn, survival of the least fit too. Big Bang porn, creationist porn, Jesus, Confucius, Buddha, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, L. Ron Hubbard porn, Little Engine That Could porn, William Tell Overture porn. Let there be God, said porn. Our porn, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy you art. All right, and so those were from the two books, and now this is a poem that I already think is going to end my next book, which is all as well, it's well underway anyhow. And this I don't know if I have to explain this or not, but I'm going to do it. This is like in the voice of a fool in a Shakespeare play, although he doesn't have the accent and he does a few less these and thous. But this fool is called Dipstick, the fool. And this is the last soliloquy of Dipstick, the fool. After 40 years as royal fool, he's still funny as he capers through the court, concocting hijinks and betting chambermaids. But his parents are dead. His wife is bitter as peach pits. His hearing's bad. His right hip aches. He gets up 5 times a night to pee. His favorite daughter's clinically depressed, and his dog, older in dog years than he is, moans and wheezes constantly. He thought he would do something great, invent calculus, cure gout, discover America. Now he understands he's peaked at fool. Leaning against an oak tree to take weight off his hip, he looks out at the audience as a single acorn bounces off his nose. The chemistry of life, he begins, geysers up into what we know as joy. Another acorn strikes his fool's cap and balances. He brushes it away. All living things feel this joy. Roaches and lumpfish and least bitterns and sea urchins and wildebeests, he says. Even bladderworts and tetanus germs feel it. That's why we struggle so hard not to die. He looks up at the ceiling ablaze with lights. Thank you, sky, for being blue and full of clouds and oxygen. He stretches his arms toward the audience. Thank you, sea, for fish and storms and waves to surf and whales that induce in good people a suitable humility. Thank you, maggots, for feeding lizards, frogs, and birds and hastening decay. Thank you, too, feces, for fertilizing fields and clearing out my guts so that I have more room for plum pudding and brandy. Glorious dirt, he shouts, for pushing things up and taking back what's fallen down. Glorious trees for rope swings and shade and whispering leaves and teaching children to love green. Glorious audience for applauding my shtick year after year. Glorious me for not taking myself too seriously. While he continues thinking things and thanking things and shouting glorious and joy, stagehands clear away the oak, which turns out to have wheels. They sweep dropped acorns off the stage, then exit, followed by the audience. Now Dipstick stands alone in his fool's cap, with his bad hip, shouting, joy! One lone firefly spotlights his grin. Thank you. It was a joy to meet you guys. Right. I'm not trying to get more applause. I'm trying to get rid of all my junk.
Harper Webb, folks, one more time. Give it up for Charles, give it up for Ron. Thank you, all right, well, that concludes the program for this afternoon, but we do have books in the bookstore and a light reception right outside. Thanks for being here, folks.